Hey guys, happy Friday and welcome back to my YouTube. Today I'm going to finish my story. It's a little noisy out there. I'm going to finish my story, like the second half of my life. So buckle in, here we go. So we ended up leaving off where my family moved to Tennessee. So this is by the time I'm 20, I just barely turned 21 when we were moving to Tennessee. So we were heading out there. So it took us 3 days. It was a 3-day trip. We, drove like 12 hours, 10 hours, just like smaller trips because we had some younger kids in our family. So we took 3 days, spent 2 nights. We got there. We found a house in Greenville. Now, if you don't know where that is, look it up because it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's up in the, corner of the tip of Tennessee, right by the Virginia and the North Carolina. Yeah, so it was right up there. East of Knoxville, northeast of Knoxville. So it was by Johnson City, Johnson City, Tennessee, like that song. So anyway, so it was the Johnson City, I guess, was the big city by us. So we moved out there, and the first few things is it wasn't too bad because the house we moved into was rather nice. It was like an 18 styles, big, white, beautiful old home. I love those style homes. We had room. We coming from our Tennessee homes, we were very packed. Like a lot of us, 9 of us were living in 3-4 bedroom homes. It really wasn't working out very well. So we moved out to Tennessee and there was just a lot of room. And not only that, we had 60 acres of property to go ride our 4-wheeler. So we could, we had a forest area, so we would go out and we would ride our 4-wheeler. And that was something I could kind of go do by myself. So I loved it because half the time I just got to go out and go explore. That's when I kind of got more into gardening, I guess, and just wanting to be that type of person because it was just I've got all this time on my hands, I should do something. So we live out in Greenville. Now the downsides to that house is, one, we had a propane tank and we couldn't afford it very much. So there was, during the winter times when we moved out there, through my birthday and through March until it started to warm up, I think we lived at that house for about 2 months. And that's just when my parents said, nope, we can't do this anymore. Because the other thing is my parents, my mom and my brothers who worked, they had to drive, I think it was 25 minutes just to get to just to get to a grocery store. It was just ridiculous, middle of nowhere. So we saved a lot of money on the rent, but it wasn't really working out job-wise. So we ended up finding another house, out in Winchester, which is completely different, opposite end of the spectrum. So Winchester, we move, which is now 30 minutes north of Alabama. So now this one's down by the Alabama border, so we're just right down here. So we truck, and one day we moved our 5, I can't remember how many hours, I want to say it was 4 or 5 maybe hours from Greenville. Oh, what's on my eye? Paint. So we moved from Greenville down to Winchester. Again, once moving to a smaller house, but it was kind of nicer because it was a nice little neighborhood we lived in. We lived by a huge lake. What was the lake called? I don't remember. It might come to me in just a minute. I'm blanking hardcore. But we lived by this huge lake. It was super cool, and it was little over half a mile, so it was literally within walking distance. And this was one of the first things. So we like to fish, and so that was super cool. Is during those summers, we actually, not summer, so the only good memory I have of is that I was able to spend a lot of time with my little sister at the time. And so my dad would take us down and we would go to the dock and go fish and go swim, and it was a lot of fun. I liked being out there for that aspect. But so we moved to Winchester. We lived out there. It's kind of just the life. Still was just kind of being the stay-at-home mom, same routine. Everybody was working. My mom was working, so we did that. And then, so pretty much one day, what had happened is, I've kind of shared this story before, is my brother and my mom and my little brother, my oldest brother, were all working at this restaurant right down the road, the mile, a little bit past the lake. And it was just a very small mom and pop. Again, I forgot the name of that one place, the restaurant, because it closed down. It was Arezzo's or Italian. It was some kind of Italian restaurant. So anyway, so it closed down. But before it did, so anyway, so my mom and my brothers work there, and so one day my brother came home, my oldest brother, and was like, "Hey, Dad, we need another server. Do you mind if Sherry comes and works?" No, she can't. Well, why not? Like, he didn't quite understand, I guess, what was going on, and how protective my dad was. And this time, yeah, I'm 21 years old, and I couldn't even have a job. So my brother was like, "No, come on, like." I work there, he works there, mom works there. Like, I don't know what you're so worried about, but we'll be fine. Like, she'll be fine. So eventually my dad says, okay, I can get a job. So to me, it's like freedom. I don't care. Like, I'll be the best server in the world if it means that I don't have to ever be around this dude. And so going, I love picking up the shifts, like working. So I started to get a little bit more freedom. So quickly, I started talking with the chef. Now, I wouldn't say he was like my type or, but to me, he was a cute guy that I could talk to. That was really it. And so we started talking, and my dad, when it was the nights that my mom and I closed and my brothers weren't there, he would come in, like, when the restaurant was closing and just kind of sit, like, in the bar area, just in a weird spot, like, and just watch us close down our tills. Like, we were closed, but the manager was just always kind of like, she was weirded out by him, as well as the cook was. So one day he's like, "What's up with your dad, like, coming and watching you guys?" So I pretty much broke down and told him what happened. Quick break. These are yummy, by the way. I like them because if you like to drink alcohol like I do, it's like, it takes a minute. It's like a soda replacement, and this isn't mad, but I love these drinks. They're low on sugar, and I can just kind of sip on it, and it doesn't, get me drunk. So, fizzies are awesome. So, anyways, where were we? So I told the cook, and his name is Brian, and so Brian goes, "Yeah, this isn't like this. You're not going to live in this lifestyle anymore." So that's when the story happened. I'll reiterate. So one night we kind of started texting. I started secretly texting him, maybe like a texting app. I don't remember exactly, but I wasn't when I got out of high school, and my dad he didn't really watch me as much, so that's why it took a minute before he saw about the missionary thing or this. So me, I didn't care. I just wanted to talk to, like, whatever guy was going to talk to me, as bad as that sounds, or just anybody. Like, I just wanted to have human contact. Like, I just wanted to not be my dad's sex pet anymore. Like, I didn't want anything to do with him. I wanted to know what it was like to be in the normal world, like a 21-year-old. Many people at 21 years old, they're out celebrating, like, doing stupid things, and I kind of wish I was in that level, because at the time I was like, cool, well, I'm 21 years old, and yeah, like, my life being my dad's little slave. So Brian and I started texting, and one night he's like, "I'm gonna come and get you." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I kind of packed up a small little bag that I had, and I hid it to the side. I think maybe like under the bed or something. So I hid the bag. And so then I'm sitting there, and my father's sleeping, and he cuddles onto me, like, at night. And it was just, it was always so hard to deal with, and just, cringe. So by the time he passes out, and I'm just, like, wide awake, like, pretend I fall asleep. So I'm scared, anxious, everything. So I get a message from Brian, and he says, "I'm here." So I'm like, so I don't know how, but I snuck out of my parents' room. I mean, not my parents, but my dad's room, my room, our room, whatever. So I snuck out of the room with my bag, and I run out, and I get out, and I made it. I made it to his car. We made it to his house, not only that. So yeah, so pretty much we didn't sleep that night. We both stayed up, just kind of scared, not knowing what to do, right? So we ended up, like, yeah, so we stayed awake all night. And so the next morning, I just had a feeling this isn't over. Like, I didn't get away. And sure enough, my dad shows up. And let me back up a little bit. So how he knew where I was at, it kind of put a few together. So they were just kind of like, well, the only person she knows is the two other people that work at the restaurant that aren't. And she's like, so my brother, who was friends with the manager, and he was like, "Hey, do you know where Sherry is?" And she's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." So then, but they knew where Brian lived because my little brother had bought some illegal things off of him before. So he happened to know where Brian was. So sure enough, I think it was around like 10 or 11 o'clock. The next morning, all of a sudden, here comes my father, and I'm just like, oh no. So here he comes. My family comes whipping up, and like I don't know, we just had a feeling that they were coming. So, no, Yeah, so that's right. I was just trying to remember. Sorry. So we had a feeling. So anyway, so they show up and pretty much try to bang down the door. And so Brian has a gun and he's like, just get off my property. And it's this old, like old fashioned, I don't even know what it was. So he's just get off. And so my dad pretty much rips him out of the house and like down the stairs and beats the unholy shit out of him. And then turns around and instructs two of my brothers to do that to him, to turn around. And so then it becomes a full-on fight with my two of my brothers and Brian, while my dad then turns around and he grabs me. He literally physically, at 21 years old, grabbed me by my hair and by my arm when I was physically kicking and screaming. The neighbors actually called the cops, but it was a little bit too late. And I don't know if Brian he didn't tell him what happened where I was. I don't know what happened with that because the neighbors saw the altercations. They called the cops. So I don't know. No one ever showed up at our house. Like the cops never did, or I would have told them, like honestly. So I don't know what happened with the cops, if he was just scared or I don't know. So cops never showed up at our house. So yeah, my dad literally kidnapped me from this dude's house and forced me back into his truck. Like I was trying to bite him and kick him at this time. Like this time, this is like my third escape, right? And I'm like, no, like, but nope. He physically forced me into the car and drove back home, which was a couple miles away. And then all of a sudden, I just get drugged back into the house, into his room. The door gets locked, my phone taken away, all of that. So I didn't have my phone for about, I want to say it was probably a week or two before I had the privilege of that back, which sucked. Like I couldn't go anywhere. I had to give up my job. I obviously wasn't working there anymore. Yeah, so everything just, I was back a prisoner. Wasn't able to leave the house, just no phone, no contact, no nothing, no outside world. So I eventually get my phone back. I said, screw this. So I messaged Brian again. And I was like, hey, like, please help me. Like, please help me. And he says, no, I can't help you. That was too scary. I said, please, like, going to do something to myself if I don't get out of the situation. Like, I'm done trying. Like, I tried before, but I just, if this is what my life's going to be, like, I didn't want to live it. Like, it was miserable. Miserable. And so I just said, I'm just done. And he says, no, I don't want to hear that. So he says, okay, we'll try one more time. This time we'll go straight to the police. So I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks later, we kind of kept in contact from the original time, once I got my phone back and all that. So he comes up and we tried it again. This time we did go to the police immediately. So we did, and we went late that night and we told them. And so then the police came and stayed oh yeah, so they wrote the report of my father. That's right. So then that's what it was. So we told them what my father looked like. So then they watched and just kind of waited. And so my father ended up seeing and realizing that we had the police there, so he never showed back up. But time and time again, for probably I want to say about a week or two, me living at Brian's house, he had to kind of go, so I kind of at this point got away. Like, this was, I finally, at this point, the second time I got away with him, so like my fourth time of trying to escape, I finally, like, get stuck. Because we went and told the police, and so at this point, my father couldn't even come down my street, or he was going to be arrested immediately. So that happened, but then he started sending my brothers to the house all the time to try to give me a message, to try to convince me to come back. He was trying really, really hard to come and get me. So he said, nope, like, I ain't coming back home. And so then eventually got to a point of harassment that we went and told the police. And then they just blocked and watched, like, the road. And any family vehicle that I had, they said was not allowed, like, on the road at all. So this probably happened for, I want to say, about a month. Like, I was probably living in this house. At this point, I had nothing when I left my family's house. Nothing. So, it had probably been, I want to say 3 weeks to a month, in that time frame. And I got the bright idea to, well, my brother texts me and says, hey, like, Dad's on the verge of killing himself. He's threatening to hang himself if he doesn't see you. So I'm just like, well, not my fault. And then he goes, well, you can come and have some stuff You can come pick up all your stuff. Let me come get you. Like, let it be okay, and I will take you back. So this is my oldest brother. So I said, Brian was at work, and he wasn't happy about my decision, but I said fine. So I felt stronger at this point. Like, I'd been away for a minute. I got to see what life was like, not under my father's thumb, and just even the little taste that I had, I said, no, like, I am not going back in. Like, I do not have to. I will call the cops. Like, I was no longer scared. So my brother comes and picks me up, and I go back to my house, my parents' house, where I was before. So I get back there, and my father pulls me into the room, and he goes, I really just need to talk to you. Said, I have nothing to say to you. He goes, what about all the times you told me you were in love with me? What about all the times you did this? Or what about all the times that you took photos for me? Because you forced me to. Because you told me I had to say I was in love with you. Because you forced me to go take pictures on your phone. Because you forced me to do all that. I didn't do any of that because I wanted to. Like, are you kidding me? So then he turns around and he pulls out a ring. A little, like, I think my brother said he spent like $70. He went and sent my little brother to the store, to Walmart, and spent like $70 on a little Walmart ring. And he proposed to me. That night, he tried to propose to me. You know what I said? Sorry, but I said, fuck no. Fuck no, I'm not gonna marry you. Like, and that's when it broke loose. That's when he realized that I was done with him and that there was no holding back. So he, that's when it started to get physical. He tried to grab me and like pull me in, like on my arm, right? And just like, no, like, you're mine, kind of. And I just said no. So I had like pushed away from him and started went out of the bedroom and like threw open the door and kind of like, not quite running, but like speedily walking down the hallway. And he grabs me again, and I turned and I slapped him. As I'm trying to remember, right? So he pulls me and I slap him to let me go, and he pulls me in harder, and he's got me like up against the wall like this. So I break my arm free, and I grabbed his neck, and I started choking my father, and I dug my nails into him like this. All of a sudden, I think he was so surprised that I fought back like that, that he just let go. And so then I finished leaving out the hallway, and he just told me that I couldn't take anything. You know, everything that's been bought for me is his, that I'm not allowed to take anything. And so I had a pair of shoes in my hand. I was like, no, like, I'm gonna take my shoes. Like, I'm gonna take something. So I get out to my brother's truck, and I was like, take me home. And he's just so confused, you know. He doesn't want to upset my father, and he's just scared. I said, I'm going to call the police now. Like, take me to Brian's house. That is my home now. This is not my home. Like, take me home. And so he's like, so my father comes up to the passenger side, and he rips the shoes out of my thing and throws them into the yard, you know. So I'm like, okay. He's like, you want to go get them? I'm good, bro. Like, you can have the shoes. And that's what you're going to do. And then he spat in my face. He turned around and gave me a big old loogie in my face and told me what a big piece of shit, just I can go on with all the bad words, the C word, the B word, just like I'm just terrible person about. And I told my brother, says, I'm about to call the cops, go. And so he ended up leaving, just kind of, you know, I think he was more scared of the cops coming. So I was about to call the cops, and so he took me back over to my house, and I was like, yeah, none of you guys talk to me again. Until you can, like, figure out that psycho, like, don't talk to me, don't involve me. And I found out, I think it was about a week or two later, my family packed up and moved back to Utah. And that was probably one of the greatest feelings in my life, because once they moved back to Utah, once I knew my father was states away from me, like, for good, that he knew that he wasn't coming to get me, right? That, like, not the Greyhound situation, that he was moved away from me, my life began. It took a long time to get clothes and to save money and do this and that, but So in my Tennessee life, so I'm living with Brian. I think we stuck together for about 10 months. That first Christmas trying to think. My parents moved back, like, I want to say it was even, like, May, June, like, early in the year, right? And so it was that December, I was like, you know what, maybe I want to fly out to Utah. I'll go see my grandparents, my other family out there, and then maybe I'll see, like, my family that's out there. So I did. I flew out, and my dad still had this, like, hold on me. He didn't quite tell me what to do or force me, but he made me feel very... I realized then I wasn't quite strong, right? I didn't know how to get away from him. Like, I felt like I still had to ask him for... So I freaked out because I was actually staying at their house when I went out there. I don't know why. I just was trying. Like, I was hopeful in my family, right? They're my family. It's what I knew. So I not moved out there, but went out there to go visit for Christmas, and it was terrible. So I ended up just booking a flight. I called my grandma, asked her for some help, and Christmas Eve day, I flew back to Tennessee. And so I just said, you know what? I'm going to go spend it with my boyfriend. I'm going to go spend it with somebody. Like, I don't know why I came to spend Christmas with you guys. Like, I don't even know. Like, it makes no sense to me. So, cool thing is my flight experience. So my grandma came and picked me up from their house that night to be able to take me to the airport. I was like, don't tell them where I'm going, like, because my dad was still just, like, creepy and, like, just weird. And my grandma didn't really know what was going on, but she knew I needed some help and to get back to the airport. So I stayed at her that house that night, and I believe I had to get to the airport at, like, 5. So it was an early flight. Well, on my trip from Chicago to Nashville, like my layover, because I landed in Chicago and then went to Nashville, I sat next to the Zach Farr Band. If anybody that listens to country music, it was a pretty cool experience because I remember seeing this group of guys. I think there was like 4 or 5 of them coming down the escalator. Looks familiar. So I'm just staring the entire time, and I was like, I didn't want to say anything. I don't want to be that person go up and just say something, but they had a bunch of stuff. And so we get onto the flight, and I sit here, and this dude sits next to me, and the dude, who I thought was Tyler Farr, sat on, the opposite end, and then someone sat next to him. So I'm talking to the guy, and I want to say his name was Gary, but he was super cool, but he was the guitarist, right? So we had a really neat conversation for about 30 minutes, and he was asking about me and this and that. And so I didn't really tell him the detail, but I was like, yeah, I'm just heading back to go, I went to go see family and blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, well, who are you guys? So I started talking about him. And quietly, he's just like, hey, yeah, so we're the Tyler Farr Band. And I was like, oh, I thought so. Like, I know who you guys are. Like, so that was super cool. So it was a good, like, last-minute flight, led to something, kind of get a little starstruck, especially when it comes to my country music. So going to Nashville, I got to sit next to them. So I get in Nashville, Brian comes and picks me up. We spend Christmas together. Later the next summer, unfortunately, we broke up. I think the more as I start to kind of saw the world, I realized that, like, I loved him. There'll always be that, like, love and gratitude for what he did for me, but I just wasn't in love. Like, he was 10 years older than me. It was just not, it wasn't relationship material, unfortunately, and I didn't want to be a hoe, but I kind of wanted to be a hoe, I guess. I didn't want to be with somebody. Like, he was about to propose, and I don't know. I started banging about my kids sleeping, so we should be good. So I just wanted to experience life. I wasn't ready to get married to somebody right after that. And honestly, with him being 10 years older than me and in a different situation, like, he was ready to bunker down. So I just, like, we had to unfortunately go our separate ways. And so then I moved in with a roommate who broke up with her baby daddy at the time. So she had a kid. So we moved in together. So she kicked him out and I moved into her place. And she had about a month left on the lease, and so then we decided, let's get a place together. Like, we're not going to be dating anybody. Like, let's just be roommates and get a place together. So we did, and I actually started to grow over time. Not hatred, but a lot of frustration with this woman. Because when it came time to finding the house and moving, like, I paid for the U-Haul, and then I loaded and I just did so much work. Like, I unloaded everything. Like, she worked, but then didn't really do much. She'd be, like, on her phone. So it just got frustrating because I literally, like, found the house, did all this by myself, but she was, like, half the income, so I needed that. I wasn't on any position to, like, so I worked a job, like, when I worked with Brian, but I was helping pay my half of the bills for his house. And so I just, over time, I was never really able to save up, right? Because so I got to a point, so this girl and I, we moved in together. Her name was Misty. So we moved in together, but she was a bartender, which at first was awesome because that first year we lived together was fun, and it was young, and it was wild, and it was just, we stayed up some late nights, and we did some things. We went to some raves, we like stayed up all night at an after party for this local band, and then we tripped together. Like, so we did a lot of growing together, and so we did a lot of growing together, but she didn't want to grow anymore. But I did. So I got to a point where I was working. I didn't have a car yet, so I finally bought myself a bicycle. So I had a bicycle. I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, went right down the road. I worked at this little mom and pop restaurant. I got off there at 3 o'clock, where I had to be at Walmart, which was 3 miles down on the opposite of town, by like 4 o'clock. So I would get off, have to get my stuff, and then I'd go all the way down there. And then I would get off Walmart at 10 o'clock at night and have to bike like 3.5 miles back to my home all across town. So it was hard, but it was worth it because eventually I saved myself up like $4,000, whatever it was, and went and got my first car, which was a 2011 Chevy Cruze. So that was my first car, and I was just so stoked because I could afford the monthly payments. Like, so that's when, so I started just working more, right? Just saving money more. Then after eventually, things with Misty got really hard. I felt like it was kind of relationship. She started like being demanding towards me. If I wasn't home or didn't want to like hang out with her parties, she would get mad. But then she would also come home on the weekends and party till like 6 a.m. when I'm trying to sleep. And my room was right outside the kitchen. So I just like, dude, I come out and, you know, tell her and her friends, like, I've got 2 jobs to work in the morning. Like, I don't get the opportunity to sleep in till 2 o'clock and then not go into my bartender job and then work late nights. Like, you guys can't always party here. Like, I'm an adult too. Like, I need to be able to sleep. And so after I started confronting her and her friends, I started kind of breaking apart like this because I wanted to, you know, move my life like this in a better direction, and she just kind of was staying on this level. So I got to a point, and I just said, you know what? So I texted the landlord, and I was like, I can't deal with her anymore. Like, I'm trying so hard, but I'm trying to better my life. So by this time, I had grown a good set of friends. I had met a lot of people, built a lot of relationships. So then that took me to my next stage. The Sanders brothers, this family, the Sanders, they took me in a lot. Everybody from his parents. So we dated, but I feel like our dating was like, we were really good friends, but we also like lived together. But they were more so helping me out. I lived with him and his brother up in Murfreesboro. So at that point, like, I kind of kept moving up, right? So I moved in with them. But honestly, I was broke. Like, I couldn't afford to help them. I was barely getting, so I was starting to work and barely save some money. And so this kid and I, we were dating. Right. So it's like we didn't really see other people. So we were dating. But it's like, I don't know, it wouldn't have bothered me if he would have saw the people, but it's like I wasn't using, I don't know if that, like, they were just awesome people. Like, they were just awesome people, and they knew that I was just struggling a lot, and that I'd been through a lot, and so they were just 2 awesome brothers who I still talk to some of that family. They were just really good, genuine people. So they take me in, these 2 guys, and so I pretty much become their roommate. I think I lived with them for about 2 or 3 months, and I got a job at a car dealership out there, selling new and used vehicles. So I did that for about 2 months, and I started making some pretty good money. So I tried to pay them back as whatever I could on top of, being able to save my own money. So I gave them whatever I could. I don't give you an estimate at this time. I give them the money and I save, and I just get this feeling to move back to Utah. Why? I don't know. What I'm gonna do? I don't know, but I get the feeling to move back to Utah. So I tell them one day, and the one guy I was kind of dating, he was pretty heartbroken. But he understood. Like, so it was just, that's why I could tell, like, they will just always be good friends. So he turned around and this guy like called off work, got his work stuff figured out, and he and I drove, like switched off. So we just left one night at like 10 o'clock at night, and he said, no, I'm going with you. And we drove from Tennessee to Utah. I believe it took us about 36 hours. I just remember me sleeping a good bit and then him sleeping. We switched off. We stopped at a Denny's, had some breakfast, and kept going. And we would just straight off and on. I remember coming through Wyoming. It was a blizzard. So yeah, because it was December when I moved back. Like December 2015 is when I moved back. So we drive and coming through Wyoming, it was this big blizzard and it was horrible and we had to go like 20 miles an hour, but eventually we get there. So we pulled into a hotel that night, we slept, and then sadly the next morning I had to say bye to my friend. And I miss a lot of my Tennessee buds, that's for sure. I met some real cool and real genuine people. And I just hope to get back to see you all one day. Because y'all helped me. And y'all saved my life. So Tennessee will always be my second home. And I've talked to him since, and you know, we talked for a good bit when I first moved back, and at first I hated the choice because honestly, I moved back in with my family. I just wanted to be able to save money. Like, I was getting nowhere, and at this point I figured, alright, it's been like 2 years. Like, my dad's probably changed and become a different person. So, I moved back in my family, and I'm just missing my friends like crazy. And so when I moved back in, I was like, I need to get a job immediately. So I took like a week off, and January 1st, right after New Year's, I was like, okay. So I went it was New Year's Eve, that's right. So I went to all these different dealerships. I was like, you know what, I liked what I was doing out in Tennessee. So I got a job at, so I got Larry H. Miller Used Car Supermarket, Murray. The manager is the only one of all the places I went into that day that says, you want to start tomorrow. All the other guys were like, yeah. He's like, we'll give you a call back. And I was like, I ain't got time to waste. Like, so anyway, so he's like, you want to start tomorrow? So I was like, yeah, I want to start tomorrow. So I came in, and here we are in Murray, Utah, Larry H. Miller Used Car Supermarket. So that's where we're going to leave off for today, because then we are going to start part 3, which is now of just my Utah life, where I went from all the work into meeting Steve and everything that happened when we first got together, along to everything through having Braxton, how I cope with it, the things I still deal with. So I'll be talking about that probably coming up, hopefully after this weekend. But I appreciate you guys for listening. I love my supporters very much. If you have any opinions, anything I can change, anything you'd like to hear, always put it in the comments. I try to get back to you, but much love, my friends. Have a great weekend. Stay safe.